Yeah.
Du kan säga ju förstår det att vi har bort
You have a story about Kentork? When you went to Kishke?
I have. I was in the game after spending a while here. I went to Sean Mylan's territory and to his house actually. He had given his house to the VEC for £1 a year until the school would be built in Bordbury. So Mylan was a carpenter himself, even though he was Minister for Education at that time. And he was looking for a carpenter to go up because there was an awful lot of changes to be made in the house. And he'd come down every weekend from the Dáil, and I'd get so much to do for the week, apart from everything else. But he wasn't like, he was a very honest man. And
And how did you get in touch with the Lynch?
oh yes, I was told then by my own boss, the CEO in Cork, that I said, geez, I know nothing about running a school. I said, I was only in, I was a woodwork teacher, and and he said, call out to Cantor. The Olive Lynch is there, and he will fix you up with any problem you have. You see. So I went out to Lynch anyway, and fairly early on, and I told the story, and he branched away from that altogether. He told me nothing about managing a school, but he told me a story about the Lynches in Cantor. And I think it was his grandfather it happened. This was in 1953, I think, when I'm talking about. And he said he came from Cullen. And he said the Lynches came to Cullen in a very strange way, he said, because his grandfather, when he married, Coulters had sent for him the day after they got married or something like that, to call down at some time. Not in the middle of the day, no. and anyway, when he was finished with the congratulations and the rest, he said, no, I'm keeping, I don't know what her name was, she'll be Beshin Sogor, a good day for Ivan. So they both of them were on the same horse.
Second horse?
Yes.
Yeah. He hit his quarters down with a whip, and he turned the horse around, and he never stopped until he reached Cullen with into his own relations. He had relations up there. And he said, that's how I'm here. That's how I'm here, he said.
Yes.
And that's the only information, the only special knowledge I got from about running a school. And
It was an interesting story.
it was,
Sign
yes.
of the times.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So he was a buyer, the Coulters was,
Yeah.
He was a buyer. He was.
In conjunction with that now, I remember in the late 80s, Kate and Jerry Buckley in Forteries telling me a very similar story about a Lynch neighbour of theirs in the original forestry very near their house. And like that, there was a Lynchman marrying presumably a good-looking young lady, and Coulters demanded the first night and it was turned down. And he arrived up to the farm shortly afterwards and said he wasn't evicting the family, but that it would not descend in the male line. Whatever came anyway, according to Kate Buckley, the whole family left the area and went to Bantry, and it's believed that that family was the origins of Jack Lynch, the Taoiseach's family. Now, Daniel McSweeney told me around the same time in the 80s that for a number of generations after that, the relations in Bantry, when somebody died, they would walk the corpse to St. Gubnet's to be buried.
And I'll add a bit to that now.
Right.
That corpse went up behind our house here.
Jag ser det.
And there was a stone up there where they used to rest the coffins on.
The coffin stones, I believe there were a number on the road from Bantry.
Yeah.
So it was well established.
Well established.
And I believe at one time, according to Daniel Mack, the weather was extremely wet, and I don't know what river they were trying to cross, but they couldn't get the coffin
The Douglas, I suppose.
to Douglas. They'd be crossing that on the way, would they? Yeah, they couldn't cross it, and eventually one man on a horse managed it, and they got the coffin across. So, different times.
Oh, very different times.
Different times.
Different times.
Have we any
Interesting.
interesting? Yes, all part of our history.
History and heritage. Yeah.
You told them about your mother.
Yes, right, we told that one.
Yeah, you can tell if you want to tell it in English, you know what I mean? Because
When my mother was a child, I suppose, I don't know what age now, she was probably quite young, over in Raw there across in the Rainery side they were living. She was sick this particular, I think it was a Sunday, and they sent for Dr. Lynch. But whoever went came back with a story that he was in Kilnamartra attending a drama. That was it. But in the middle of the night he arrived on a saddle horse. I suppose when he went back to Ballyvourney, he got the message, turned around and came all the ways over to Raw. So that tells you how what a dedicated doctor he was, apart from everything else.
Yes. Yeah, dedicated man.
Yeah.
There is one other. There is one other bit of information we have, and I wasn't aware of it until about a year and a half ago. Seemingly in later life, he was appointed a Justice of the Peace, which maybe didn't fit in with his nationalist background.
Yes.
But what I learned was that the reason he decided to do it was that he could protect some of the local people that might be before the courts on various charges. And he was, we actually have a newspaper cutting of his appointment. It was just a list of people, and he was one of them. Another man that I'd know his family, there was a Cantillon man from Little Island. I think they were originally a Kerry family, and this Cantillon man in Little Island, he was also appointed on the same date as Justice of the Peace. Dr. Lynch functioned as a Justice of the Peace in the courthouse, which was attached to the mills, the ruins of which are still there, the courthouse itself and the barracks. And the man that gave me some information on that and showed me the whole vista of it was Diarmuid O'Connell, who has some magnificent photographs of the same, of the house and the barracks and the prison cell, even in the barracks.
there was another thing there as well about the faction fighting, how it ended.
Oh yes, yes. Yeah.
Pierce died.
That's right, Diarmuid. The faction fighting in Ballyvourney was, like most towns in Ireland, was widespread, and in Ballyvourney seemingly it was between the Lynches and the Toomeys.
Yes.
Now this Donald Dove, of course, was executed on a trumped up charge and murder on that, but this continued right up past the 1900 into it. And on the day that, because of Padraig Pearse's execution after 1916, the local priest called a meeting of people in the doctor's hall, and people were distraught. Remember, these were before the days of radio or anything else, so it probably took a bit of time for the news to filter. And they said a decade of the rosary for Padraig Pearse and the other leader shot. But then the priest decided that he would call on one member from the Lynches and one member from the Toomeys to come forward and shake hands. And he said, let bygones be bygones, let this be the end of faction fighting. And they said that not alone did one member from each clan shake hands, everybody, all the Lynches and the Toomeys did, and that was the end of faction fighting in Ballyvourney. Good.
You're full of information. Just great to you.
To knock me out now.
We can't get any skeletons.
They're all out of the cupboard now.
Well, there was another version of that story,
Right.
and I don't know if I repeated it entirely or not, but where the Toomeys and the Lynches were, in Akron or Akela.
Yeah.
And it started over in Clondrod. I didn't know there was a girl married over in Clondrod, I think. And
There's
when,
a different story about a funeral.
oh, it was, yeah, but
I don't know if they were Lynches and Toomeys.
they were, I think.
And they look at the
Don't record it, so
We'll cut it out. It isn't right.
It can be cut in here.
It can be cut anyway.
the story was anyway that the
She died young. She was married over there and she died young.
Go on, you tell it now.
I can't. It's in Bullyvarth and it's in Dornoch Kelkel.
Oh, it is just, yes.
Yeah.
It's in the look. And they're not Lynch, what Lynch is one Lynch?
I'm not sure.
Just the
I think there was a Kelher and
Well, anyway,
Lynch you then, Joe.
You'll all remember like it was supposed to be dubbed.
That was what?
We're going to, we cut it out if you're not
Oh,
happy
yes,
with it.
yeah.
There was some question about where she'd be buried because
Yes.
she, you know,
She
I
was
heard
young
a
and
bit
her
about
own
that.
people wanted to bring her to Ballyvourna.
Oh, yeah, she was from Ballyvourna,
She
so.
was from
Right.
Ballyvourna, the
Right.
people she was married into wanted to keep her in Clondrohid,
Right.
and there was a terrible struggle.
they got
Ballyvourna people won out.
angry with each other during the
There was terrible fighting over it.
and anyway, the following day, anyway, she was brought
As
against
far as Ballyvourna,
to Ballyvourna,
up to the cemetery.
Right.
up to the cemetery, laid on the grave ground,
Right.
and her father said,
You
"Take
can
away,
Take it away, which you know if you want her.
if you want."
He proved his point.
That's right. And she wasn't taken away. She
I
was-
do. I do.
Yeah.
What was the problem, Jerry, with the Creedons in Clondrohid and the house and the parochial house that was built?
Yes, yes. Are we recording this?
Oh yes. What's and all?
That's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No names, maybe.
Right.
Well, it's hard to avoid them.
It was about his marriage. Remember when you were looking for his
He was married to a
marriage
Creedon
cert,
woman first.
and he couldn't find it.
He was, yeah. And Dr. Lynch, ran foul, we'll say, or had a disagreement with the clergy on a few times in his life. Maybe the first time, I suppose, was in Paris when he walked out. And at another time, seemingly during his activities with the Gaelic League and everything else he was doing in Ballyvourney, there was seemingly a Toomey priest,
There was
and he wasn't in favour of this Lynch man doing things. And seemingly what we heard was that one Sunday morning the sermon was devoted to foreign influences in the parish that weren't to the good of the parish. And by all accounts, Dr. Lynch stood up, and I won't use the expletives used, but he told him, "Shut up, you don't know what you're talking about." And he turned and walked out and didn't go back again. Seemingly he was drive his wife to the door of the church, but he didn't enter it, and he wasn't seen again until Daniel McSweeney's mother, May, told me this in 1987, that as a young girl she was in the church and they were all elbowing each other. Dr. Lynch had arrived with his second wife, and I suppose part of the marriage bargain was that he'd have to go back to the church, and he did. She said it was the major point of conversation in the village for a week after that. Now, the other thing was that when he was getting married to his first wife, we couldn't trace a record of the marriage cert anywhere. We tried all of Cork, Cork City, Macroom, Killarney, Dingle, because Clondrohid, yes, no trace of it. And well, we know he got married in Mayo.
That was to the first wife.
To the first wife, yes. And anyway, a few nights ago, a gentleman told me on the phone, "Do you know why he got married there?" Well, I said his wife was teaching there. No, he said, but there's a reason. And I said, no, first I've heard of it. It seems the reason was that in Clondrohid, near it, Ballymacorcoran, there was a house built for the parish priest, and for whatever reason the house was never handed over to the parish priest, and it was built on a farm land of Creedon's land, and the word was that the priest put a curse on it and said grass will grow outside that door yet. And seemingly Dr. Lynch or his wife refused to get married there, and that was the reason given. Correct or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yep. It was
They got
in
married in Mayo.
Mayo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was teaching for the
And this Greta's granddaughter, purely by coincidence,
strange,
came,
wasn't it?
came across the
Wasn't that
circle.
nice?
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice to find. Yeah.
I think his daughter said something about that to us, about that he was driving them down to mass, but that he wouldn't
wouldn't go in.
stayed with the horse,
That's right.
and he had there were rings on the ditch that time for
Yes.
time,
Yes.
Tying
and
the
that
horses.
he could see in
The door.
the door,
Yeah.
you know. No, I don't know. No, like you I mean, you said something there. No, that that explains it too. Like that. It was in his was it in his second marriage that or I thought no.
He went to the church for his second marriage.
Yes.
Yes, he went. Yeah.
Go back to the
Oh,
church.
yes.
He went back.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
How did he meet
That's
that
right,
woman,
that's right,
lady?
that's
Do you
right.
know?
They were both very hugely involved in the Gaelic League,
Oh, yes,
and
I
she
know.
was involved. He was under custody of it in Dublin, and he used to go there a lot. And seemingly she was very involved,
Yeah.
and that's where the
That's where
friendship.
they met.
No, she was, I think, over 30 years younger
Oh,
than.
yes. Was
But
she-
they had two children.
What did they?
One died in childbirth.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not childbirth, but as an infant. And the other died, I think, maybe at the age of 8 or 9.
Really?
Returned with the mother to Dingle,
Oh, yes.
but wasn't
But
healthy
didn't live.
and didn't live. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
The wife, did you open a bookshop?
She bookshop. That's right.
Ending.
In Dingle?
That's right. Yes, yeah. And they're all seemingly there's no gold left in Dingle.
No.
My God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting.
Interesting, yeah.
Very.
They're the three daughters.
There, yes, we have that photograph.
Yeah.
The other thing was the very good photograph that Dermot did last year of him. We used to, well, somebody said, and I saw it written, that he never dressed like a doctor, and I
Really?
thought like he was going around with a couple of studs missing out of the shirt and what have you.
He was
So he-
casually dressed.
Yeah, casual. Yeah.
Yeah.
It turned out he was actually
He was the complete opposite.
nearly a dandy, you know.
Oh, what's
That
it?
photograph,
Oh, yeah.
a
That's
cravat,
really what- oh, that's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
cravat,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
all
yeah.
this.
That is quite
I
true.
suppose that was his French
No
influence.
doubt. No doubt.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
For the time.
yeah.
Yeah, he was away from home
And of
for
course, the
many
church
years.
says in Belly, it's that they wouldn't let us go into the priesthood.
Yeah.
Of course, he was treated badly.
Now, the other story I forgot to mention, Danjo, the fourth version of why he left why he was. Will I start again?
No, you're fine. Continue.
The fourth version of why he might have resigned his commission, so to speak, in Paris was that a letter went in stating that his grandfather had been executed. And in those times, you had, especially in Paris, where I suppose the high flyers with vocations were, you had to have an exemplary background.
Plenty numbers.
But it wasn't his grandfather's fault.
Oh, sure,
No,
we understand that. He was
Yeah.
framed for it,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, like,
Just totally wrong.
There's a field out there in Ballymena.
And that was a different thing. That was for a different thing altogether.
Was it
Part of the credit.
part of the
It
ground?
was, yeah. But it might have happened that too, but other things happened. Yeah.
Danjo, sorry,
No, no.
also Daniel Mack had a story that he was executed in Macroom. Now, somebody else said, and is written, that his head was up on the spike over Macroom Castle. That's a different lynch.
Yes.
Oh, it is,
There
it's
were a number of lynches
There were, yeah.
executed over maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
We have the record of it.
Yes.
He was executed in Gallows Green in Cork, which is in Barrack Street, really,
Yes. Yeah.
Greenmount, Barrack Street area. And,
Wrongly. Wrongly.
Which is
yeah,
wrong.
oh, wrongly, yes, of course, yeah. Yeah,
Well, they
and
were
it said that
retired.
after his last confession, he still went onto the gallows saying that he was an innocent man, claiming his innocence.
They were
And
retired.
that's recorded in a book by Coleman O'Mahony, who's lecturer in CIT, and he did a book on the workhouses and the famine in Cork. I think it's called In the Shadows.
Oh, yes.
And he listed then all the people that were executed for one reason or another, and most of them were very petty. Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, Yep.
He was amazing. He was an amazing man. Like apart from all we've heard about him now, like
Yeah.
he went off to America, and of course we joined the French Army.
That's
in
right, yes.
reserves,
Right.
and made a lot of money there. Like had to start from.
Yes.
Yeah, we presume he got a few nuggets and came back with his.
I would say so.
He
Yeah,
must
Clondyke,
have got-
yes.
Yeah.
He must have got rich.
Yeah, well, some people, Padre O'Reilly has a thing that there's a monument, or he's mentioned on it. I don't know, we've never heard of that.
Yeah.
But certainly he was in New Mexico,
Yeah.
in a gold rush there, and by all intent, seemingly he came back with the intention of returning.
That's
He was
right.
just
His
visiting his
mother
family,
passed his
and
day.
she reattached the apron strings.
Yes, she
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a great thing for the parish that she did.
Yes.
He talked told us that too.
Man of ability, in fairness to him, he
He
was-
went
Yeah.
to Queen's College at his age, like, and became
That's
a
right.
doctor.
When he had a beard near his home, and the mother didn't know him at all.
Didn't know him at all. That she was knitting by the fire, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that she actually caused him to change his
Mind.
mind
Right.
and to go on and do doctoring.
Yeah.
And he did it in 4 years. By God, you know, it is more like 14 years now. First time to do it.
That's right. And he won in the first year. He won a prize for French.
Did he?
And after that, I think every year he won some prize for anatomy,
background,
pathology,
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by all accounts, he got a rough enough time in UCC from classmates. Of course, he was nearly double their age, and he was, which was
Yeah.
maybe not unusual nowadays, but
Yeah.
but very unusual at that time. Yes, yeah. In actual fact, I'm hoping we have a bit of a contact in, or a couple of contacts in UCC, and we were tracking his academic record and various things. And one man made a suggestion that there is most buildings and rooms in UCC are now named after various things, and they actually have a common room for mature students,
Oh, that would be neat.
which is nice. And we're hoping that it might be renamed Dr. Lynch.
That
Yeah.
would be very fitting.
Fitting.
Yeah.
And especially now that the president of UCC is a
Yes.
doctor himself,
Indeed.
and
Yeah.
we've actually provided a DVD of last year's events and the booklet
Yes.
to him to work on it. And but the only thing is that all this building is being refurbished, so it could be a couple of years before they'll get around to doing it again. Hopefully they will. Yeah.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
Sorry. So now then, John, have we enough info now?
The pinning of the Protestant church.
Oh,
All right.
Was he in English? Was he
He was
in
Protestant.
Protestant?
He was.
And where did he come from? No,
I have no idea where he came from,
no.
but I know that my grandmother used to talk about him, that he was the doctor in her time.
Oh.
And he was a very good doctor too.
Is that so?
Yeah.
I do.
We turned up. My daughter Radine turned up on the internet. Do you want to record it?
If you want to, right?
You might. You might.
Let it run anyway.
Yeah. You can dump it when I'm gone.
Yeah.
Talking about Dr. Lynch again, another little story. After his death, there was a Dr. Walsh, I think, appointed in his place, but there was a lot of controversy about whether he should be an Irish speaker, fluent Irish speaker or not. And there was a big argument between two political factions, and I think it would be the Macroom Board of Guardians would be the people, the relevant people. Now, I'm not certain of this, but I think it might be, they were known as the All for Ireland Party, and there was the United Ireland League, and one was more nationalist than the other, and seemingly the less nationalist one had a certain doctor in mind to appoint him, and there was like controversy over it, and he was appointed, but he was from Middleton, and 1 month later a vacancy in Middleton arose, so this man departed back to Middleton. But the interesting thing was, at the first Board of Guardians meetings after the doctor's death, I think about 5 weeks, 6 weeks after his death, 2 letters were written by 2 of his daughters. Mrs. O'Shea, Corey Shea's wife from Macroom, and Mrs. O'Leary, and an unmarried daughter. Which one, again, I'm not certain. Both of them wrote that they were given 6 weeks to, the young family were given 6 weeks to vacate the house because it was required for the incoming doctor, and they thought that was, considering all his contribution to the area, that was very short notice. And they wrote very strong letters to the board of guardians, and it was asked at that meeting that the letters be recorded in the minutes. So they're there. Yeah.
Yes. That's poor farm doing.
Yeah.
Oh, it was, of course.
After all he had done.
What age was he when he died?
He was 71. 71. Born 1842, died in 1913. 1913, yeah.
And his children were still fairly young.
One, Mrs. O'Shea was married, and the other two, as far as I know, weren't. Mrs. O'Leary one daughter married Tom O'Leary of Vetton Macroom, son of Conda Drummer. He was known as a well-known drummer. I think his father, they had a shop in New Street, as far as I know. And the other daughter, third daughter, Greta, married later. She married Sheehan from Kanturk, a brother of the man with the Kanturk hosiery. He had a shop seemingly in Kanturk, and he died quite young. And Greta and her children went to Dublin and worked for the rest of her life in the Irish Hospitals sweepstakes, and I think lived quite near Croke Park, certainly in the 40s. Yeah.
Interesting.
Is there any of any progeny from that set down there at all?
There's
John Cronin, isn't it?
John Cronin.
John Cronin.
And your people.
No, I see. I'm a great grandnephew.
Grandnephew, that's right.
Yeah. The O'Learys, Harry Leary, and all those. They were the O'Sheas. There's John and Donald O'Shea at the moment in Macroom.
And they're still there.
Oh yes, he's living in the original house.
Is he?
Yes.
John O'Shea. His brother Donald is somewhere across from the old triangle, is it?
I think so.
Around there. And they have a sister, Kathy, who came on she came back from Abu Dhabi, especially last year.
She wasn't the young, was she?
No. She was married to they're living in Dublin, but he went out and he went out to Abu Dhabi with some bank. He was in financial services in Dublin, and she took leave of absence, television producer with the BBC in Belfast and in England before that. Yeah, she's a very gifted, capable lady. Yeah.
All his descendants were all
right people.
And then, of course, Tom O'Leary, the doctor in Kinsale, he was Con Leary, the vet. Now Con Leary, his grandson, got first place in Britain and Ireland in veterinary for 2 years. It was the one veterinary course.
And Donegal, Lillis.
That not
Lillis O'Leary.
Yes, but I think that would be a little bit further out.
Maybe so.
Not a direct line.
Maybe
yes,
not,
yes, but I know what you mean.
There, right.
And those Lillises, one of them had the post office on the Western Road in Cork.
Really?
A way back, yes, yeah. In
And
Falcarra, is it? They have a hotel there.
they're up there somewhere, I don't know where. And then you had the Leary guy who married Maureen Chuhig the Mills.
That's right. She was a sister of
He'd be brother to Harry Leary.
two were they canons?
They were?
Yes.
Yeah, Michael and
One man wrote a bit of doggerel,
That's right,
the
yeah.
booklets, American history and all sorts of things, he was Dan. He was a doctor.
He was a doctor, yeah.
And he was in
Canada, I think.
Yeah, but he was in Wexford, and I don't know, was there a fire? He was married twice. There was a huge fire, and 3 or 4 of his kids were burned alive. They died in the fire, and he went to Canada and married again.
Did he?
And I believe there's somebody of the second marriage coming in September.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He married a Filipino lady in
I know,
Canada. Yeah.
We're all ancient history now.
It's all history.
We're done.
It's amazing how the doctor and the veterinary ran in the family all the time until
It's
even up to
amazing.
this day, don't
Yes.
it?
It is because
That happened.
in my family, like there are three vets.
Yeah.
Okay.
And uncle, he was there last year. He was 93. He's still driving. He's still the vet in the ground track in Cork at 93. And you'd want your facts right if you want to discuss sport with him or politics or anything else.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
They're
his
great.
two sons, yeah.
They're
were
two
all there.
vets.
Two vets.
Mhm.
And my sister's a doctor in England.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
She's amazing. We were
So,
in this house, don't you?
Yeah.
Have
She's
you?
upstairs somewhere.
I
Your
suppose
granddad.
the vets in the Larrys came from Tom O'Leary.
No doubt, yeah.
That the original Tom
That
O'Leary.
married the Lynch girl.
Yes.
Oh yes, yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It runs in families.
Runs
They
in
say.
families, that's amazing, isn't it?
Tom is retired now in Macomb too.
Has he?
He has just retired, I think, and he has a
Ah.
daughter, a vet,
Yes,
who's
I met
taking over
her.
the business.
All right.
Yeah.
I met her there a couple of years ago, and then she went up the country to get
Mm.
experience. I
Yes,
suppose.
I suppose.
So she's back now. Yeah.
Back now.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw his van outside the gate, outside his door a few times, and I
Yeah.
was thinking, things are quiet.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the explanation.
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
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 That's probably it.
You're not recording this, I hope.
No.
Can you go for now? I know from the sun because I'm going to sleep.
No wonder.
No, I'd say we went off it.
We met this for at 11 o'clock this morning.
What is a long day.
A long day.
Would you like a cup of